And here we are, as promised, relatively small patch today. We're going to do an overview of everything changed for the Air tree as well as just the new additions. Starting off, we have the A10A late 10.0. You have a multitude of loadouts, and this should get a custom one as well as all the new vehicles of this patch, or at least all the top tier jets of this patch. Let this sink in. Mavericks is probably going to be the best loadout. AIM-9Ls are pretty decent, but on the A10 they're actually so slow on launch. They function basically the same as on the AH-1Z, the Viper. So are they that spectacular? Not really. But on this thing they might be a little bit more potent, because this thing actually, well, fights lower tier planes. And fighting all aspect missiles without flares might actually be very problematic. These things fly basically the same. They are very slow. They have an absolute metric load of flares. And the survivability is alright. The engines die pretty quickly without much issues, because most of the time if you start dodging you will get shot from above. But this is a ground attacker, as we all know. This thing is not going to be very great for air-to-air combat, but of course I will be taking it out for air-to-air combat for a video anyway. But more on that later this week. These two fly basically the same. The performance is basically the same. And if you look at the engines, 40-40, 40-40. The frames are the same. Only difference are the weapon loadouts. B-26, not much to say about that here, because well, it's simply a bomber, and the French also get one of those. For the A-10s we get a multitude of skins. So if you don't have it, you get the multicolor, which is green, which I really dislike. Luckily we have the grey one, which is by far my favorite. The A10A gets a few more, the early version, which is the premium one, so I try to get as close as possible to the one that we have in the other one, the grey one. Green, not my cup of tea. Winter looks alright, but also not my cup of tea. Mask is the one you just saw, and this one is absolutely hideous in my opinion. I'm not a fan of ground camos, as a lot of you might already know. On to the next nation, we have Germany. We got the F104G, which gets an improved loadout. It now gets the loadout with 4 AIM-9Js. Also has some flares, and it's still at 10.3. China and Japan are not very happy with that, considering that their F104J and their F104G are 10.7 with the same missile loadout and no flares. The Su-22 is still absolute dog shit for air combat, and the MiG-23 MLA is very close to the MLD. It doesn't have the slats on the wings. Other than that, it's basically the same. It does outrate the MLD, but the MLD is a little bit more nimble at those higher speeds. Not much to say here. We got the MLD or the MLA. I will probably be running the R24s as per usual, as well as the R60. Still no R60Ms, but it also doesn't need that at all. Looking at the Su-22, you have a few loadouts here. It's all not that spectacular, and I would much rather fly the MiG-27, but of course that's not present in this tree. And the F104, same deal. Nothing changed, only the AIM-9Js. Are there any new camos? The answer is no. These are all the old ones, and they're all the things that you expect. Su-22, does it get any camos? Nope. Does the MLA get any camos? The answer is also no. So on to Russia, gets absolutely nothing. The MiG-19 gets a slightly different gun sight. Other than that, Russia gets nothing. Britain gets basically nothing. Japan gets basically nothing. And now we are at China, and we have the J-8B. Also has no skins. And as of right now, the loadout here is pretty mid. It's not very great. Well, we're waiting for the custom loadouts. You can probably pick two of the Aspides with two of the PL5s, but right now I will be running the PL5s. A video on this plane will be coming out tomorrow. And how do you fly this thing? It's basically a MiG-21 bis, just a different missile loadout, and I put them kind of in between the Kfir playstyle and the MiG-21 bis playstyle. This thing pulls absolute AOA out the ass. The gun will go wherever you want it to go in a very short amount of time. Do keep in mind this thing is pretty heavy, so it might not be very great in a raid fight, but in a 1v1 it is still pretty damn strong. On to Italy, the crown jewel, the F104 ASA, and it has 3 camos. This is going to be my favorite one, and it's a standard one, luckily for us. Here we have the one that's also on the other F104S, and here we have the unicolor, but it looks absolutely horrible because it doesn't actually color the pylons for the AIM-9Ls. And how do you fly this thing? Well, it's an F104 with flares and better missiles. Not much to say here. You fly straight, you go extremely fast, and of course you have countermeasures now and better missiles, making this thing a lot more potent than the one that we already have. Unfortunately, it's also 2 BR ranges completely higher. Nice English sentence, but you know what I'm saying here. Other than that, nothing really has been changed, other than the fact that the pre-series, for God knows what reason, actually has 8 50 cals now. But looking at it, they have already changed it. This thing earlier today had 8 50 cals instead of 4. They would double at 2400 rounds, and they would have double the rate of fire. They fixed this very quickly, I do have to admit. Unfortunate, I was gonna have a little bit of a joke about that. We have the Mirage F1C and the B26 for the French tech tree. And again, the Mirage F1C, I made a video on that earlier today if you want a more in-depth review. But what is this thing like? Well, it has a pulse Doppler. It has semi-active homing radar missiles. It has very good IR missiles. It has a lot of countermeasures, but the problem is it is still French. So you know what that means. The plane still does not perform. It doesn't really have anything going for it, other than of course the specs on paper. It doesn't have good acceleration, it doesn't have a good turn rate, and it doesn't have a good top speed. And these 3 things together is an absolute death sentence. The flares help, but it doesn't make this plane good or better. It just makes it a little bit more bearable. And on to Sweden, which got absolutely dick all, other than the SRV F105, some helicopters, but nothing in the air tree. Israel got an amazing plane, and it's called the F-84F. Don't buy this thing, just another horrible addition to the Israeli tech tree. In terms of grinding, the Kafir is still pretty good. It still has some decent planes here and there, but the fact I have 3 talismans here should tell you enough, because getting through this tree is an absolute pain in the ass, and the F-84F is not gonna help in that. The A4E is alright, but now that it lost its airspan, I'm not sure how great that's gonna be for grinding. And that's basically all I have for you for this one. Very short, very compact, but of course I want to make sure that I don't waste your time with this, and we just want to get this over with as quickly as I can. J8 video coming out tomorrow, A10 probably somewhere in the weekend. I just bought a new motorcycle, so I will be riding that opposed to playing this game for obvious reasons. But J8 tomorrow, and then probably the ASA or the A10. Depends a little bit on my mood and what I want to fly. Probably going to be the ASA if I'm slow on time, because it's going to be a lot easier to actually get good footage with. And the A10 is just a little bit of a meme, and I don't want to take it too seriously. Look forward to that. I should have everything out by Sunday.